occasion. But frankly, the reason I'm here tonight actually started 4 years ago when I met Gary Malhotra. And that was when I was invited to an occasion held by Rotary International, during which Gary Malhotra was inducted as a lifetime member of Rotary for the work that he did with respect to helping people during COVID in Canberra, Australia's capital, and I was impressed. And what Gary did, and I know that you've heard about the work that Gary did from others, but I actually lived that experience, so I can tell you directly. What Gary did was quite amazing. Now, I say amazing in the sense that I've been involved in Australian higher education for longer than many people here have lived. Certainly over 40 years I've been involved in running parts of universities, being a professor and being the Chair of Higher Education for the Tertiary Education Council of Australia. What was different was this. During COVID, Gary, who owned the Australian AIM vocational business that also offered hospitality and cooking and other training and so on, actually invested in putting money into providing food for students and members of the community. And he did this at his own expense, to the extent that the Canberra community itself noticed the difference that it was making to the lives of international students. And Gary then extended this to people who were not necessarily international students, but were suffering hardship. Essentially, he completely took profit out of his business and said to his students who are involved in hospitality or in cooking, he said, prepare food packages for people who need help. That was amazing. And you know what was amazing, going back to it? Here was I, head of, at the time, an international higher education provider that did have a hospitality school, head of higher education for a representative body for Australian universities, and I'm asking myself, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we, with all the money and capability at our disposal, why aren't we doing what Gary's doing? I was genuinely impressed. I met Gary, I shook his hand and thanked him for his contribution, not just to Australia, but in a broader sense, to what education is about. It's about giving in so many ways. You give of your knowledge, you give of your aspirations, but also you have to give resources as well, especially to those who are struggling. I started a conversation with Gary, and I wanted to get a better sense of his vision because I wanted to introduce Gary to other members of higher education establishment in Australia. To say, you know what? With all our experience and with all our doctorates and all the acclaim that we get as senior academics, here's somebody who can teach us something about what education is about. After that time, I went back to my university and other work, and then Gary approached me and said, would you like to work with me on transforming UBSS into something that reflects that vision which we discussed before in Canberra? And I thought about it and said to my wife, you know what? This is an opportunity now to do something at this stage of my career where we can actually make a difference. So I then discuss with Gary what could we do with UBSS that would make a difference. And critical in terms of what Gary wanted to do for the organisation is to say, let's transform it from being an organisation like all institutions, frankly, in Australia and many worldwide. Let's look at the students, not just in terms of dollars, not just in terms of people who, as it were, cycle through our institution, but as individuals whose lives we can change. And what amazed me was once we started introducing this philosophy, and I'll explain how we introduced it. For a start, we wanted to give those students with the capability, those students who clearly were high performers but had financial stress, an opportunity to work with us. It is honestly the case that Gary took money out of his own pocket to assist students, to help those students who could not afford to complete their qualifications, their degree, in order to allow them to do so. I have never seen that at any university in Australia, or I studied in America and in the UK. I've never seen that before. We have some of the highest student retention rate in Australia while still maintaining academic standards, because we ensure that those students who are up to the mark will not fall behind because of lack of resources or lack of support. That is what UBSS is about, and that's why you saw earlier those amazing results for quality in learning and teaching, QUILT, which means a huge amount in Australia. We now have the third largest MBA program in Australia offered by an independent provider. We're in a situation where we now rank above the universities of Melbourne, Sydney, and other major Group of 8 universities in terms of student reports and surveys by the government and independent agencies of an institution that actually cares and an institution that supports its students. This is something that we're genuinely proud of. And that's why I'm here tonight. I'm here tonight because of a meeting 4 years ago with a remarkable person who had something to teach this old man and gave me the opportunity to work with him and other colleagues in making a difference through not just helping hands, but so many other ways in which Gary is trying to transform transnational education in Australia. Ways in which, for example, he has focused very much on opportunities for young women, and not just young women from disadvantaged societies, or circumstances, pardon me, but young women who do not necessarily have the finances or indeed the sense of self-esteem sufficient to take on an MBA. We actually have student advisors who counsel young women and talk with them about the opportunities that are available and discuss structured pathways which can assist them to achieve their educational aims. This is quite amazing. It makes a difference, and it's a journey that we invite more people to join us on as we hope to turn transnational education into transformational education.